Welcome to the Grace Story Podcast, where inspiring stories are brought to life. This podcast is made possible by Grace College and Seminary, located on the shores of Winona Lake in the great state of Indiana. I'm your host, Dr. Drew Flam. This is the Grace Story Podcast. Today on the podcast, we're going to be talking about shooting sports. So we all are going to have something fun to learn today. And I've got three gentlemen here to help us with that. To my right is Adam Turner, who is a local attorney and been the coach of shooting sports since 2016. I'm a little fearful because we are talking about shooting sports, and you did my last living will and trust. So, we'll see. Hopefully I come out unscathed
That's
today.
right. We've got you taken care of well on
across,
that, too.
Across the way, we have Paul Blair, who served here as CFO at Grace and now as COO, Chief Operating Officer, and was one of the impetuses to get this whole thing started a few years ago. And then across the way, Tim Clay, who serves as the graduate assistant, was a participant, I believe, in the shooting sports team, and we'll learn more from him as well. So, Paul, I'm going to start with you. Because I kind of think this thing starts with you. So give us a little bit of background on why did you want to start this at Grace? Where does your personal passion for this come? And then how did it get sort of the conversation started at Grace?
Sure. I'll start out dangerously and go all the way back a long, long time ago when I was 15 years old. But I'll do it quickly. I took a job at a gun club and did not grow up shooting guns. There were no guns in our house, etc. I just went to make a little money before I was 16 at the local gun club, and very quickly became interested in the shooting sports. There were a couple of people who I worked with who became mentors of mine, and but there was no presence of a shooting club in either at the pre-collegiate level or the collegiate level. So when I was in college, I was allowed to shoot and represent my school, but there was no team. So and I went to various competitions, et cetera. So it's been something that I always missed, was having the ability.
We're
one,
stop
to have
right
the
there.
coach.
You went to various competitions, and what was your
Yes.
level of success at those competitions?
It was fairly high. In 1984, I was second in the nation in skeet, so at the collegiate level. And so, and people would ask, well, who's your coach? Where's your team, et cetera? And I was there by myself. And so, fast forward to my time at Grace, there was a professor here, Roger Bingham, in 2012, 13, who had interest in shooting sports, but he didn't really have a lot of background. He had, at the competitive level at least. So he said, do you think we could get a team going at Grace? And the first couple of answers, quite frankly, were no. But then as we developed the concept a little further, continued to have dialogue and talk about it, we took a proposal to the senior team, and Roger had the desire to serve from an administrative perspective, but he needed a coach. He said, "You shoot a lot, don't you? And you compete." And I said, "Yes, I do." And I would help, but I didn't want to be the coach, just because the full-time, head coach, because of my schedule. So we got the club started. Adam joined right as we were beginning the club. We got wonderful help from several people to get going, and then Roger left, and so a couple of years ago, and I became the head coach, and I love it, and my schedule has freed up now with some of the changes that you've talked about. And so I have more capacity of time available to serve as the coach.
That's awesome. So Adam, you were next to jump in on this shooting club thing. Did you have a background in shooting sports yourself, and what made you say this seems like a great place to engage with some college students?
Yeah, absolutely. Myself and my wife have had a lot of connections with Grace and in the community and working in the area. And I grew up hunting and doing a lot of target shooting and that kind of stuff, but not a whole lot of the clay sports or the shotgun sports like the shooting sports club does. But started shooting, getting connected, started shooting with Paul quite a bit. and getting a little bit more, shooting competitively myself in the last 7 or 8 years. And the timing just kind of worked that the club was launching and I was interested in getting involved.
So that's kind of a neat thing, right? You're helping coach the team, but you are active participants yourselves in competitive shooting.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so
Yeah.
you get to do this as well, right along beside students. Which, if I went to go like coach basketball, I couldn't go out there and play basketball with the players. But in shooting sports, you can. It can be a lifelong sport.
And I think that's a very important thing to note here is that this is a sport that the participation levels go, literally as young as a person can safely handle a shotgun, all the way up till, we've even had people where we wheel around, in the course before. So it's multi-generational. You can shoot and you can be competitive all throughout your life, literally.
Yeah, I think that's one of the neat aspects of it for me is that we're giving some of these students that maybe didn't have this experience before coming to Grace something that they can do for the rest of their career. One of our seniors that just graduated this year, Abbott Joy, who also throws javelin for the track and field team, he said we had 2 competitions that overlapped, and one was with the track and field team and one was with the Grace shooting team. And he said, you know what, I'm going to go throw javelin, because I can't throw javelin anywhere else in my life after I graduate, but I'm going to continue to shoot, the rest of my life and have this as a hobby. And we've had several individuals express that to us over the years, and it's a really neat aspect of this is we're giving them something that they can continually do in the future.
Well, and maybe something others don't realize, and I didn't realize, is how big of a sport shooting clays and shooting sport it actually is. Any statistics or any scope you can give us for, like, in the United States, how big shooting sports is?
I'll let Paul handle that.
More anecdotally than others, but like I said, for instance, who knew that 11,000 kids competed in one particular event in the state of Minnesota alone? When we go to recruit at the Scalé Target, program for students that are high school age or lower, they'll have over 2,500 students compete at that national competition. And so I don't have the statistics on how many per state, et cetera, but it's a pretty prominent thing that happens, but people are surprised when they find out, there's a local gun club, or there's a tournament where there's 100 people participating in town, et cetera. And so it's one that is really kind of almost a secret that has been kept that we're trying to unveil, through participation and through more involvement of students, et cetera.
Well, let's get to the third member of the crew and the best named for this sport, Tim Clay,
That's why you got the
who
job.
was literally born for this, I think. So, Tim, you are a grad assistant now, but you started out actually as a participant. Tell us a little bit about your journey about participating, and then what is a grad assistant?
So I came to Grace in 2018, started my MDiv with the seminary, and I'm one of those oddballs here that did his undergrad somewhere else and then came here to do my grad degree. And I had heard through the grapevine about this shooting team on campus, had no idea when I got here that this team even existed. And I saw an email, the weekly emails that Grace sends out, and it was like, the shooting team is having a call-out meeting. And I was like, I need to be involved. I grew up shooting, like backyard shooting.
Yeah.
Just never really competitive. I went to the gun club every now and then and did some trap and ski, but never any good at it. And so I thought, well, I love doing this. I'm going to see what it takes to be a part of the team. And so I reached out to Roger at the time, and he said, hey, come on, you can be a part of the club. And so I joined the club and got to do that. And then year number 2 came around, and Grace started this idea of a graduate assistant position for all of club and JV sports. And I said, well, I'm a grad student and I'm on the shooting team, so maybe this could work for me. And Paul thought it was a great idea too. And so I became the grad assistant for the last 2 years doing that, and now I've graduated, and we'll continue working a little bit here with doing some recruiting with the shooting team as where life will take me here. But
That's awesome. So tell me a little bit about shooting sports. Is it one sport? Is there multiple disciplines? Like, just explain a little bit how it works when you go to a competition. What does it look like? And you decide who's best to answer that.
Well, I guess I'll start with it. There are a variety of different shooting sports, and some that look very different from others. There are rifle and pistol and some of those things that you will actually see in the Olympics and everything from biathlon and on. Our area is specifically related to shotgun sports. So our club covers a wide variety of different disciplines under that umbrella, but we focus primarily on that area. Paul has a few props over there. I'm sure he can give a little bit of
props help
demonstration.
explain what the
Yes,
different disciplines are? Okay,
So-
show those and tell us what the
see
different
if I can
disciplines
get them on
might be.
camera.
Well, first of all, let me explain the difference between a shotgun and a rifle or a pistol. Whereas a shotgun is a shell, or they call it a cartridge, and different than zeroing in and aiming a rifle or pistol that's going to shoot a singular bullet.
Right.
This cartridge or this shell has small lead BBs in it. And what happens is there's a plastic sleeve in here between the gunpowder and the shot, as we call it, or those BBs. And when this shell is fired, that sleeve or that wad, a plastic wad, pushes down the end of the barrel, and those loose, they're compact in here, but those BBs are thrown in a pattern. And so you think about a spray or what we call a pattern of pellets, BBs going out, and this shell, believe it or not, inside it has approximately 350 of those small lead BBs. So a shotgun doesn't necessarily carry the distance that a rifle or a pistol would. And instead of aiming at the bullseye on a target, you're aiming at a clay target, or we call them clay pigeons, that are moving through the air, sometimes as much as 50 or 60 miles per hour. And they can range a distance from, leaving very in close proximity to where you're standing, or they might be 30 yards away, going at all sorts of angles and elevations and things. And so this is a game where, if you think about throwing a football to someone, if they're going straight out and away from you, all you got to do is place that football, over their head or right at them at the right distance. But if they're crossing, going straight across, and you think, okay, if I throw the football to where they are when I throw the football, it's going to be behind them.
Right.
So it's a game of leading those targets. It's not very often that we aim right at a target. So it's understanding the various leads. And these clay pigeons are very brittle.
Ooh.
And when they're hit with the BBs, they'll shatter into thousands of pieces.
So, like how you said it makes a pattern, those 300 BBs. I mean, are we talking like this big? Are we talking a couple feet, or does it depend?
It depends.
Okay.
It's
And is that
exactly
where
right.
different disciplines come in based
To
off
some
of what
degree.
you're shooting?
Absolutely, to some degree. And even within a certain discipline, you might vary. The shotguns now today have the ability to vary how quickly that pattern spreads out. It's called choke. And so you might have heard of a full choke gun or an open choke gun. What that is that's describing, it's telling you how tight or how loose that pattern will be at certain distances.
Okay. You have a couple other clays here. So express to us, what's the difference?
So he just broke what would be like a standard clay target on what we would normally shoot with trap or skeet. And trap as a bird is when the bird is going straight away from you, and it kind of oscillates back and forth. And they're roughly, you'd hit a target between 30 and 50 yards away, no further than 50, because you couldn't hit it then. It'd be on the ground. But then the other targets we have here, this would be called a mini target. And this would be thrown in the game called sporting clays. So you have trap and skeet, which uses that bird.
So trap and skeet's where you stand in one spot and you're going to shoot. They have the two kind of throws on both sides, right? And you're going to shoot 100 ish? Is it 100?
Well, it depends. Typically, we do rounds in those disciplines of 25.
Okay.
And then a full round would be 4 rounds of 25.
Four
for a full
rounds of
100.
25.
Yeah.
And you kind of move different spots
Changing the angle.
for 25 to change the angle, but those are going to be coming kind of across or
They're
out.
always going to be in the same area.
Yeah.
And,
Okay.
and what
real
you're
quick,
describing
yeah.
there is skeet. It's
That's
2
skeet.
throwers that are coming across, and then the shooters will change their station and change the angles and presentation of those targets. So
Gotcha.
it'll depend. Then, of course, we were talking about lead. The lead will differ depending on what angle you're shooting.
Sure.
It's all
Okay.
geometry.
Oh boy, no wonder I'd be no good at it.
And real quick, and I'll throw it back to Tim to explain a little more about sporting clays, but trap and skeet are what we would call the more traditional games. And the main difference between trap and skeet and sporting clays, which has become very popular in the last couple of decades, is that trap and skeet are shot on fields that are very defined in that I can shoot in Warsaw, Indiana, or I can shoot in England or anywhere else in the world, and a trap and a skeet field will be set up the same so that it's consistent. And when you compete, you're competing based on your average over a certain number of tournaments. Whereas sporting clays is more like it's depicted as the golf of shooting sports.
Well, let's start. Let's finish this out. So the 3 of you are going out shooting, and you're going to shoot 100 of these from your 4 different spots. How many are you going to hit?
Depends on which discipline.
Let's talk about skeet.
Oh, skeet. Okay.
Skeet, I'm a good day if it's in the mid to low 90s.
Okay,
out
mid
of
to low
100.
90s out of 100. Okay.
Don't even ask him. He's
He's just he's snickering
Where are
over
you
there
at,
waiting.
Tim Clay?
my best day was 95.
95. Best day was 95. Okay, and Paul, you'll get what would tell us?
With a 12 gauge, somewhere between 98 and a half and 100.
98. Okay.
No,
all
he's
right.
being too nice.
He gets grumpy if he's under 98. Let's put it that way.
I was wondering how you got a half, but okay.
It's
so
average. It's average.
That's the first one we've talked about here. So that's skeet.
Skeet.
Okay. And now we're talking sporting clays with what you have there.
Yeah, this is just one of many sporting clay targets that
Okay.
are out there. But this one's a mini, and then they vary in size. Some are a little larger, some are this size, some are flat, some are thick, and they roll on the ground, and those are called rabbits. And so they have just so many variety of targets and target presentations. Like, who did you say golf? It's like sporting clays is like golf. You go to a station, and generally there's 10 to 12, maybe 15 or 16 different stations, all that would equal 100 different targets. And you're going to see everything and anything. Just in golf, you get to a new station, you're in a new hole, and
New
it's gonna
hole,
look
and it looks different.
And
Yeah.
that's the challenge. That's the kind of the excitement about the game, is that you don't know what you're quite going to see at each station. So it helps level the competition from, okay, shooting the same thing 100 times, you can do it really well, but if you go out in the sporting clays, it's going to be a lot different to shoot.
And
this
every
target.
course is going to be different, just like in golf, every course is going to be different. Whereas with skeet, as we said, it's the same no matter where you go.
And you got the weather. I mean, the targets can get rained on, and then they get all messed up, and the wind can mess them up, or it's snowing outside, and so the rabbits that were supposed to roll on the ground get buried in the snow. I mean, it's all sorts
And
of...
not real rabbits. These are
Clay target
clay
rabbits.
target rabbits. Yes.
Correct.
Just
Only
make sure
clay
everybody
targets,
knows.
yes.
Yes. We like you guys like to use like animal terminology, but they're not actual animals.
We don't shoot animals.
Well, and because the origin of the sport was to depict hunting conditions.
Sure.
It was a way to simulate hunting in a safer and more frequent in a more frequent opportunity for the hunter.
Yeah.
And the original clay targets, what has become a clay target, were glass balls filled with feathers. So that when you
Okay.
hit the glass ball that was catapulted out, you'd see the poof of a feather simulating, shooting a bird out of the air.
Well, you've given us a good overview of what it is, and I want to talk more about the actual team at Grace. But first, talk safety. So I'm sure that was a question that came up when this was presented as an opportunity for Grace. Was how is this? Is it safe, and how do you ensure that it's safe for participation?
Absolutely. The first, what we say as a club is that it's safety first, fun second, and then scores third. Because we are a club sport. We are starting to get to the point where we have the competitive team, and so that's parsed out from the overall club. But the stipulations to us when we started the club were, no guns on campus. It needed to be a club sport so everyone could participate who wanted to, and we needed to be self-funded. But no matter where you go, safety is the key. And because of it, we are participating in one of the safest sports there is as far as injuries. And I'm also in charge of insurance at Grace. And the year we started the club, I thought this was kind of funny. I was on the phone with our agent, and we were talking about all the changes that we wanted with sports. And at that time, we were dropping our rugby team and picking up shooting sports, and the agent just kind of snickered and he goes, "Well, I can tell you your rates are going to go down." And so if you look at the sort of the actuarial tables and injury statistic tables, you have to go to table tennis to get to a safer sport than the shooting sports. So we want to preserve that, and we want to respect the fact that we are, firing, lethal weapons, and but millions and millions of shots have been fired without serious incident. Does it happen? Yes, but it's very infrequent that you hear about it. I have never experienced, in 40 years of shooting, nearly 40 years of shooting, I've never experienced a serious injury, and I've seen a lot of shots fired. The Grace Club in itself shot over 75,000 targets last year, and we're on track to shoot 100,000. And when you go to a tournament, there might be 10 fields going on a weekend and 200 or 300 shooters. That's tens of thousands of targets being shot. And I go pretty often, and again, I've never experienced really any kind of an injury.
Yeah.
Adam's the one that gets injured when a shell ejects and he cuts his fingers on it. So I carry Band-Aids.
Those paper cuts, man, they'll get you. Yeah.
But we teach.
That's the risk, is the paper cut.
We teach every student on our team. The basic firearm safety. Every time you tote a gun, you treat it like it's loaded.
Right.
And you always are making sure that the gun is pointed in a safe direction. You're never pointing it in an unsafe direction. Our guns, our shotguns, our double barrels, you can open them. And we always open them unless we're on the field ready to shoot. So we're never carrying around a loaded gun when we shouldn't be. It's never being pointed at anything. And kids are always required to wear hearing protection and eye protection. And the eye protection is so that you don't hit yourself in the face with a shotgun shell when it comes out of the gun. And for the main reason, but...
So you gave us that threefold purpose: be safe. All right. So the second one was have fun, and part of that is club sport, right? Anybody can participate. So give us a sense of like how many students are in this. What kind of range do you have of abilities, low end and high end, on the team at Grace?
Yeah. So this last year we had about 30. Individuals in the club.
That's amazing. 30 people that participated. That's awesome.
Absolutely, and very actively. We have club shoots twice a month, and that's the other thing I would point out too. Tim talked about shooting in the weather. Is we don't really have a season. I think our cutoff for sporting clays is about 15 degrees. As long as it's warmer than 15 degrees, we're shooting rain, shine, snow. It doesn't matter. We're out there, and we tend to have 15 to 20 kids at each shoot. As far as ability, it's a range. It's open up to all students, and we've had individuals come in that have never fired a gun in their life. To now we're starting with Tim's help in recruiting, having some individuals that are high school athlete shooters. They shot through high school, and that was their sport. That was some of them even their varsity discipline for athletics, and have a lot of experience and I'll have a lot of skills. So it really is a wide range. But I think what is neat about the experience is we're teaching them from the start. To see an individual go from the beginning of not having any experience whatsoever to an individual. We have one young lady that is one of our top shooters, and she had very little gun experience before coming to Grace, and she actually placed first at nationals in one of the disciplines this year for all the ladies. So to see somebody come from that to that point has been really exciting. So then our team, our competitive team, is kind of a more subset of that entire club numbers, and right now that's about 10 or 12 individuals in that.
So you have 10 to 12 people, and those are the folks who are going to competitions. And how many competitions approximately a year, collegiate competitions, would the team participate in, and who's there? I mean, is this colleges from all over? Is it, is there a conference? How does that work?
Well, it ranges from a national competition with hundreds of participants, which is what Adam was talking about, to just more of a local one where it might be an invitational where 3 or 4 or a half a dozen schools go for an afternoon to shoot. And there are varying levels of, how intense that competition is, of course. The difficulty that we have is that there aren't that many colleges that have shooting clubs. And so the proximity of the clubs is not as, is not as dense as it would be for some other sport, for instance.
Can I interject with a question?
Yes.
How many schools in Indiana do you think have a shooting team?
Oh, man.
That's a good
I'm
question.
going to
Tim.
take let's see. I know there's about 40, 45 colleges in Indiana. So let's say, half of them, 20.
How many, Tim?
There's 2 schools in Indiana with shooting sports team.
Really? 2?
Us and Purdue are the only 2 schools in Indiana with shooting sports team.
Wow. And so then will you compete against Purdue at competitions?
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is kind of amazing, right? I mean, you think of the size of each institution, and there you are competing against Purdue.
Yeah, and it is unfortunate. Hopefully there will be more and more schools.
Kind
that
of
start up.
unfortunate.
Or they can all just come to Grace.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's-
Good job. See, Tim's doing his job here.
That's why his job's been so easy. And he's had so much success. No, but I think that you're going to begin to see more schools with teams just because of the prominence of the younger kids, students shooting. It is really taken off. There are a couple of organizations that are supporting youth in shooting. One of them is the the Scholastic Clay Target Program, SCTP. We use a lot of acronyms, so if I've used them, I'm trying not to today. A nationwide organization that is really promoting sports, and that's the organization that will get over 2,500 students at their competition in the summer. And then but there are some other organizations that are really helping helping teams get started. In fact, we as a school, when we were self-funded to start out with, applied for some startup grants, which we received from some of these organizations, and get a fair amount of we received a fair amount of help with, which took some of the pressure off of us to raise all of our. Well, we were raising the funds, but a couple of them we were able to to get a very large catalyst to start from a financial perspective, or in-kind donations particularly of ammunition from organizations.
And you've received that ammunition. You've received shotguns from individuals who have provided.
I will tell you, I was as skeptical as anybody, understanding the fact that, first of all, you need some pretty expensive equipment to start this. You need the support of a gun club, and we are very fortunate that 10 to 15 minutes away, we have a club that offers the venues that we've talked about. Many gun clubs might only offer 1 or 2 disciplines, and we've got one here that offers 4, basically 4. And so they were very supportive from the beginning. We said no guns on campus. They even gave us a space for a vault that was donated to us to keep the guns. And it is kind of funny because when we started talking about starting the club, one of the gentlemen who barely knows Grace, but he knows that I was affiliated with Grace, he said, "Well, I've got this gun in my gun cabinet that I would consider donating." And I'm thinking, okay, here's Grandpa's old gun stuff. Well, it turns out it was barely used. It was one of it's sort of the top of the line guns that you would expect to see. And of course, it's one of the most popular guns that the students want to use. And it's like, okay, we're spoiling these kids out of the gate.
5 years later.
But 5 years later,
still,
it's still one of the most popular guns that they use. And so but the support has just been it's been pretty amazing when you
Staggering
think about it. Yeah,
is what I would say. I've as you know, I've helped raise money for a lot of different organizations, and there are a lot of people that really take an interest in youth and things that are outdoor oriented and shooting oriented, and these kind of disciplines that raising funds and support, and we're going to continue to do it. Need to do it every year. However, it's really been amazing to see the community get out behind it. So.
Yeah, as the advancement guy, I've been quite impressed of how much funds have been raised, and you've had matching gift programs and double matching gift programs, and I think you have an endowment, actually a fairly healthy endowment already started. You're able to give out scholarships, you're getting donations but as you said, you got to keep doing it. So, as you think about like the vision of where you want to go, what do you kind of hope for the shooting club at Grace, and where do you see it in the next few years? I mean, national champions. I mean, what are we talking here? What's the plan?
Well,
Full-time coaching position.
full-time coaching, that would be mine.
Full-time volunteer coach. I love it. That's right.
Well, actually, we have, because of the support that Grace has started to provide for the promotion of club and junior varsity sports, we have a 5-year plan. And if you just carry that 5-year plan out with the recruiting goals that Tim has, when you just think of the numbers, the club could pretty easily be double its size in the next 4 to 5 years, and that doubling is going to have a large component that comes from those students that Adam was mentioning that grew up shooting. And when you do that, there's a very big difference between, when it comes to the cost of a program, between taking an individual from the very beginning and spending a tremendous amount of time on fundamentals and shooting. It is not uncommon to go to a competition and shoot 500 or 600 targets in a weekend. In fact, our students that went to the national competition shot over 800 targets in a long weekend. Whereas if you're shooting a club sport, 50 to 100 targets for a beginner is quite a bit of shooting. And Tim has kind of a tagline that every time we pull the trigger, it's 50 cents. By the time and that's just for the clay target and the shotgun shell. It's about 50 cents. So as Adam said, this is a funding sport, for a sport that needs funding on a perpetual basis. Now, we are getting to the point where we have our equipment, we have the shotguns that we need, et cetera. But again, every time you pull the trigger, it's costing. And so you also get to the point, he was being a little sarcastic about additional coaching, but you get to the point where you can only shoot so many targets with a given amount of time.
Yeah.
And so, but I would expect that we'll have 40 to 50 club members in 4 or 5 years. We are blessed in that a few of our graduates, including Tim, but others have stayed in the area, and next year we'll have at least 3 that will be helping with the team and have the proficiency, and we're going to send them to instructor courses because we have gone through the instructor certification courses so that so that there's some hopefully some credibility that comes with it, but some true experience of understanding what to do as a coach, et cetera. So the more of those students and others that we can get involved from a coaching perspective, the more we'll be able to offer, which then can translate to a larger club. But I don't see a reason why, if we have those resources, that we couldn't be shooting 150 or 200,000 targets a year.
So if somebody wanted to get engaged, they wanna come hang out and see what you guys do at a practice or a meet, or they've got a shotgun or some shells they want to donate. What's the best way to get in touch with you as a team?
Well, first off, I'll cover maybe if prospective student or a current student's looking at us, kind of that process. At the beginning of the year, we always kind of hold an invitational, just kind of an open shoot, allow some students to come out and just see what it is and experience it in a very safe and very controlled environment. And then if they'd like to, more interest from there, then they can get involved with the club.
Okay.
From a community standpoint and donors, we definitely would encourage individuals to reach out to Paul. We always need donors and contributors, and we have a fundraiser shoot in the fall. It's kind of think of a golf outing, but it's sporting clays instead of golf. So you sign up your foursome. Much more fun. I played in a golf outing last Friday, and it's definitely much more fun. Think of that format. Kind of prizes. You sign up your team, you come out. The Grace students are there to shoot alongside of you. You can pay for them to shoot for you, kind of thing, and add to your scorecard and have some fun prizes and raffles and that kind of stuff is another great way to support. We're always looking for community connections, and thankfully we've found a lot of those, and we could always use more.
So they email you, or do you have an email address for the shooting sports team specifically?
We do have Facebook and Instagram and an email for the shooting sports.
I like that you're the one that mentioned the Facebook.
Yeah,
Facebook.
They have it.
There is a Facebook and Instagram out there. Okay,
this gray hair is not the most active on those sites.
But Tim and I didn't think of mentioning it.
But do you want me to give out my email?
Well, if you want to, sure.
I mean, it's easy. It's blairp@grace.edu. So it's BLAIRP, my last name and my first initial at Grace.
Or even easier, shooting sports at Grace EDU.
Okay.
That'll get there the one too.
But what I would say is that anyone who's listening or knows of this and it has any interest at all in learning, if you've never picked up a gun, if you've never shot, don't be intimidated by it. It can be very intimidating. If you're just interested and want to go out to the gun club and give this a try, or come out and watch our students, get in touch with me. We love to go shooting. We love to promote this sport. And again, it's something that just about anyone can do. And it's a hobby that you can take to any level. There are many people who might shoot 3 or 4 times a year. There are some who shoot 3 times a week. So yeah. But please, if it interests you at all, just reach out to me, and very happy to introduce you to the sport.
Well, you've even taken me out, which I appreciate. I haven't been invited back. That was a few years ago, but I might have been the exception to that rule. But it was. I enjoy golf, and it was a lot like golf. I mean, it was really fun just to go from hole to hole, and to try it out and see how it worked. I really enjoyed it, not expecting to enjoy it. And so I would encourage folks to try it, see what it's like. Good.
And a plug for the recruiting side of things.
Yes.
That is my job. If you're a prospective student and you're listening to this, we're always looking for new students of all skills. There's a place for any kid, any student, as we've all mentioned, on the team or on the club. What's something that we haven't mentioned in all of the funds that we raise, we don't put any of that cost on the students. We're not expecting the students to pay 50 cents every time they pull the trigger. We're trying to do this so that they have the opportunity to do it, because it's not something that a lot of college kids could afford to do. Mm-hmm. And so we're paying for the cost of that. And if anyone has a shooting background, they understand how big those costs can get. And we're also able to offer scholarships to new students who are interested in the sport, who are interested in coming to Grace. There's tuition scholarships available for all those students as well. So
there you go. Come on, students, try it out, and especially if you're really good and at competing at the levels, we'd love to have more students involved. So anything else you want to make sure that we hit on about shooting sports here at Grace College?
No, I'd say thanks for giving us the opportunity to share about it and get a little bit more publicity and coverage. Maybe share real quick our finishes at nationals and the trophies and hardware we brought home.
Yeah, it's interesting. These students who began with us as a club sport, who had very little, if any, experience, who spent a few years on the club, going back 3 years ago, they won or they took third place in their division in one of the disciplines. The next year then, 2 years ago, they took a second place in that same discipline and third in another one. So we brought 2 trophies home. This last year, we were back to third place in that discipline, but we were first. We were.
You've won too much. You don't
Well,
even
well,
know.
right, no,
It's
we
like,
brought
what
three.
a problem.
we brought 3 trophies home. So it's been 1, 2, 3, and an overall division cup, trophy home. But we took third in 2 disciplines and 1 in the other.
Right.
First in the other.
And we had a young lady that finished first in 5-stand, which is one of the disciplines.
Wow.
Over all the female individual athletes.
Yeah.
Nationally.
And then
Nationally.
the guy sitting here next to me
Oh yeah.
capped off his collegiate shooting career, and in the last discipline, the last 2 rounds of skeet, and didn't miss a target.
Wow.
So, and that was
that average up.
that was a personal, and it was a personal best for him too.
That's
so.
awesome. Congratulations. Well, what I also just love about this, and this is true for all of us, whether it's shooting sports or anything else, you guys are passionate about this, and you've used it as a way to engage students and build into their lives. It's a lot more than just shooting sports. I mean, you get to spend time, lots of time with these students and invest in them and be examples to them and mentor them and be Christ to them, which is just awesome that you've taken something you're passionate about and turned it into a way to build into students' lives. So thank you for that. Thanks, Adam and Paul and Tim, for being a part of the podcast. And thanks to everyone for listening today to the Grace Story podcast. We would appreciate if you would share and like this wherever you retrieved it from. Thank you to Dr. Wally Brath, Associate Professor of Music here at Grace, for our introduction music. And thank you to Andrew Palladino and Rick Neer for serving as our executive producers. We hope that you will live your best Grace story today.